I've been playing games on PC since I was a toddler, but for the past decade or so, I've also used a Mac for work. Now, I've tried playing games on my MacBook when away from home, but the choice has been limited and the performance sluggish. But Apple wants to change that. In 2019, they launched their video game subscription service, Apple Arcade, which works across iPhones, iPads, Apple TVs, and Macs. And just a few months ago, they released a colourful range of sleek new iMacs with their much-discussed brand new Apple M1 chip. And since this M1 contains a GPU with up to 8 cores, I thought it was time to find out if that translates into real-world gaming performance. Naturally, Apple Arcade games ran beautifully, with support for mouse or Bluetooth controller. I used my Xbox Series X controller, though some did feel more suited to touch controls, which the iMac doesn't have. But the real test came when I downloaded the platforms through which I play most games on my Windows PC: Steam, Origin, and the Epic Games Store. Straight away, the age-old problem of Mac compatibility became very obvious. Of the 500 games that I own on Steam, only about 175 are compatible with Mac OS. On the Epic Games Store, I had other issues. It took me several attempts to even load a game without crashing, though when I did manage to fire up Borderlands 3, it did run pretty smoothly. Surprisingly, several of the games that I play most often on PC were also available on Mac, like The Sims 4 on Origin and Crusader Kings 3 on Steam. Most existing Mac games were developed for the previous Intel chip, and you need a program called Rosetta to run them, which is basically an emulator that translates apps built for Intel into something that the M1 can understand. In my experience, that worked seamlessly, though it does mean that most games aren't reaching their full potential. And that's the takeaway here. The M1 can offer powerful performance, but just as we saw complications with apps at launch, most game developers outside of Apple aren't optimizing their games for the M1 just yet. Mac still lags behind Windows when it comes to the selection of games, but I was surprised at how much was on offer and how well and silently the iMac ran them. I still wouldn't recommend buying a Mac for games, but if you need one of these stylish machines for another reason, then there is plenty to play in the breaks that you take between the jobs for which they were designed.